All right, we'll start on our next section, adaptations and survival. We'll know quiz on Monday when we get back. Um, First thing is this is our unit visual. This is our 4 steps up here of natural selection. We'll cover these here in a few minutes, but we'll talk, all week long we'll talk about these rabbits and what makes it natural selection. Okay, and you said you don't understand much of it now, but we'll step through it here in a few minutes. When we study this adaptation and survival, we learn how organisms of all kinds, plants, animals, humans, change so they can survive. Those who are unable to change with whatever changes in the environment um, become extinct. They go away. So it's important to understand how these things have changed and what we've lost with the Earth in order to see and predict how things are going to change in the future. You know, right now one of the things that's changing is the global warming. And so the species, especially things like coral in the ocean that are real sensitive, and we'll see about things in the Arctic that'll probably change in the next 50 years. If those things aren't able to adapt into the warming temperatures, they'll go extinct. So it's what can adapt. You know, what do they have in their systems that lets them adapt to certain things? We've been studying this from our prior learning, animal behavior and classification. So these things are kind of connected in that way. So as we learn more about how animals are classified, we see what has enabled them to survive on a constantly changing Earth. You know, what things that helped us identify what animals were are things that help them in the future. Also, through survival behaviors such as finding food, defense action, courtship, parenting, things like that, and seasonal behaviors, migration, hibernation, estivation, we can see what organisms have been able to survive and become stronger over time. You know, when the birds started migrating, that was an adaptation for them to get out of that cold environment and then back to the warm. We'll try to figure out which animals have been most successful with this process. All right. Now, we got mainly we got 5 things we're going to learn this week. Okay, so it'll take us a little bit to get through them, but just be patient with me here. First of all, we got 3 kinds of adaptation. So we'll have a 1, 2, and 3. All right, on this one. Okay, 3 kinds of adaptations. We'll describe them a little bit. All right, describe the 4 parts of natural selection. So again, you'll have 1, 2, 3. That's a nice 3. And then 4 below that one. Okay, to help with that one. We'll explain how variation occurs in a population. I'll explain what variation means when we get there. All right, think about like a variety or something like that. Next, explain why genetic variation in a population is important. It's you know, there's a reason why it's so critical to have. And then explain how resistance to insecticide is a survival characteristic. And I'll give you some stories on that when we get there. All right, we talked about prior learning already. We'll get to that. First of all, we're going to cover the 3 kinds of adaptations that help organisms survive. Okay, so get prepared to write that here. Again, we'll have a 1, 2, and 3. We'll explain them a little bit to the side there. All right. So let's do this here. Make sure you understand. 1, 2, and then 3. All right, and leave some space beside. First one is adaptation for obtaining food. Okay, so beside this number 1 here, we have adaptations for obtaining food, and basically it's what an adaptation is, and we'll cover the vocab later. An adaptation is a characteristic that improves an individual's ability to survive and reproduce in a given environment. Now, we covered it in the film last week with the tigers, right? What adaptation on their body helped them to slip through the jungle there without being seen? Well, it was the stripes in their fur color, right? So that was an adaptation for them. What adaptation allows them to catch food once they get there? Well, that's claws and teeth. Okay, almost all organisms have some sort of adaptation to help them obtain food. You know, for humans, you know, ours is like our thumbs, right? The fact that we can run and walk upright, our intelligence, things like that. So what I would put beside adaptations for obtaining food, right, is this right here. Almost all organisms, right, have adaptations to help them obtain food. Okay. Uh, Organisms meaning plants, animals, humans, whatever. Okay. Number 2 is predator-prey adaptations. So on your objective sheet back there, number 2, predator-prey adaptations. Okay, and many organisms have adaptations that serve as a defense against predators. One common adaptation that helps predators and prey is called camouflage. An organism that is camouflaged is disguised so that it's hard to see even when the organism is in view. So predators or prey, which we talked about last week some, use camouflage. Predators to hide so they can catch the prey, and then prey hide so they don't get eaten by the predators. What you should put beside there, let's see, I think the best thing to put down here is we can put camouflage, okay, is used by both predators and prey, right? There we go. Okay, so we'll put camouflage is used by both predators and prey to disguise, right? To disguise themselves. Okay, and you can pause this anytime you need to and go back and listen or take your time. But camouflage is used by both predators and prey to disguise themselves, right? The predators don't want to be seen, so they can hide and then basically ambush the prey. The prey don't want to be seen, so they can avoid being eaten. All right, so that's number 2. Number 3 is adaptations to interactions. Now, it's kind of a funny thing to say here, but you've heard some of these words before. 2 species can acquire adaptations because of their interactions with one another. Okay, so there's a whole lot of species that have this kind of back and forth relationship. Adaptations because of interactions can take place between any organisms that live close to each other. Examples are like parasitism, right? Parasites where, like a tick, okay, one is good and is nourished, the other one is harmed. Okay, like tick on a human would be that type of relationship. We're harmed and they're nourished. Commensalism, where basically one is good and then the other one doesn't really care. All right, isn't really bothered at all. And then the third one is mutualism, where both are beneficial to each other. Okay, and I'll show you some pictures of that we get back on Monday. But what you should write down for interaction, and let's just write this down. 2 species, okay, can acquire or develop, is a good word too, adaptations because of their interaction with each other. Okay, and if you have room, then just list these 3 examples at the bottom: parasitism, commensalism, all right, and then mutualism. And again, one good, one harmed. So you might say here you got the frowny face. Okay, here, okay, it's the nothing face, right? Doesn't matter. All right, mutualism, that's your smiling face, because both of them are actually good to go right there. Okay. Now, the next one is natural selection. Okay, basically what that is, it's your inherited characteristics in populations can change over time. What you get from your parents can actually change over time a little bit. Just little what we call mutations, things that just accidentally happen when you put the DNA kind of together. Natural selection is the process by which individuals that are better adapted to their environment survive and reproduce more successfully than those who aren't. It makes sense, right? If you are better adapted to your environment, you're going to survive or have a better chance of it and reproduce, again, a better chance of it than someone who's not. Think about a polar bear in the desert, right? They're not very well adapted to that. So natural selection would say you don't have a good chance of surviving. You probably should survive. Or turn it around and say a cactus in the tundra, right, in the Arctic, right? It's not gonna last very long. It shouldn't anyway. So individuals that are better adapted to the environment survive and reproduce more successfully than those who aren't. Just common sense, right? Now, the theory of natural selection explains how a population changes in response to its environment. If natural selection is always taking place, a population will be adapted to its environment. The individuals that are likely to survive and reproduce are those that are best adapted at that time. Okay, again, just makes sense. All right, now, as far as the 4 parts of it go, how it goes is as follows. So put 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, as we go here, 3 and 4 at the bottom there. Number 1 is overproduction. Basically what you put here, so take a second and write overproduction as it's written there. Okay, more offspring are born, right, then will live to become adults, or more offspring are born that can possibly survive. Okay, more are born that can possibly survive. Okay, if you have these rabbits here, that's what we'll discuss a week long. If you have these rabbits and 500 are born in 1 year, there's no way all 500 will survive and become adults and have kids of their own. It's just not possible. Stuff happens. Okay, So it's overproduction. Too many are born than the environment can possibly support. All right, you can take a second and write that down however you need to. Number 2 is genetic variation. So when you have somebody born, you can look at these rabbits here, right? This one's gray, this one's brown, this one's black. Okay, variation, what it means is variation is a variety of things. Okay, so basically when I read this, the individuals in a population are different from one another. Some of the different characteristics improve their chances to survive, and some basically lessen their chance to survive. Others with these changes, for example, for example, rabbits are stronger or faster or more likely to survive than those who are weaker and slower, right? Otherwise, how are you going to avoid predators? So there's all kinds of genetic variation. Color, right? Strength, speed is a variation. How slow or fast you are, how smart they are, right? How camouflaged they are with the environment. All these things are variations, and some will be good for them, some will be bad for them. So I would put the number 2, genetic variation with a population. And you can just say individuals in a population are different from one another, right? You just put that right there. Individuals in a population, right, are different from one another. So take a second, write down this here and that first sentence there. You can pause if you need to. Number 3, struggle to survive. Okay, it says here an environment might not have enough food or water for every individual born. Again, that's why those 500 won't make it, because there's always going to be a shortage of something. Many individuals are killed by other organisms, and some others cannot find mates. Only some individuals survive and reproduce. And again, the name of the game is to reproduce, to pass on your genes to the next generation. So number 3, write down struggle to survive, and just say this, that just put down this: only some individuals survive and reproduce, right? Not all. And you can put this: not all. And if I ask you why, you can tell me. Okay, not enough food, not enough water. Maybe there's diseases in the camp there. Okay, predators, right? Maybe they can't find a mate, but for some reason, okay, they will not all survive, and that's important to understand, because only the ones who survive pass on their genes, and their genes will go to the next generation to kind of start changing the population. Number 4, successful reproduction. Successful reproduction is the key to natural selection. Let's see. The individuals that have better adaptations for living in their environment and for finding mates are more likely to reproduce. Those that are not are more likely to die early. So basically here, when those babies who started here, right, have their own babies, that's successful reproduction. So when the babies grow up and have their own babies, that's successful reproduction. So you write that down. When the babies grow up and have their own babies, right? Just like this here. Okay, this black one here has the babies here. Okay, they survived everything else. That's successful reproduction. So write that down. Okay. When the babies grow up and have their own babies, that is successful reproduction. Okay, you can pause whenever you need to. So that's our first 2 right there. Okay, now, how does variation actually occur in a population? All right. It says here, in order for natural selection to continue, individuals within the population must be different. So it's good to have a lot of different genes, right? That's why I said today, you don't want 2 tiger cubs who are brother and sister and have so many genetic similarities to mate, because it doesn't give the rise to anything new or different or special, which is what you want in genetics. Over time, the population will be made up of more individuals with characteristics that help them survive. If a population decreases rapidly, a genetic bottleneck occurs, and we'll talk about that on the next slide, but many characteristics may be lost, or because of the individuals with those so basically, bottleneck is I'll get that next. I won't be too fast here. You want to be able to have some differences here and explain how variation occurs. Basically, when you bring in new traits to the population, okay, when you've got a population of people or rabbits or whatever, and then you bring in some new rabbits with some new traits, right? So maybe you've got a colony of rabbits who are strong and fast, and they've got good color, right? So they're strong, fast, they got good color, and they're able to find mates real well, okay? But they're not really good at finding food, all right? Or they're not really good at their overall intelligence, or how smart they are. You can bring in new rabbits, or new rabbits could basically bring in themselves. And then when they start making babies of their own, now those new babies have all those traits, including be able to find food and able to um, you know, just being able to be more intelligent with everything. All right, so that's why genetic variation is so important. All right, and why it's and how it occurs is because when new traits are brought in from outside, right? When new traits are brought in from the outside, that's how variation occurs. All right, now let's talk about why variation is important. Okay, in order for let's get here. Talking about the bottleneck, right? The bottleneck. This is how genetic bottleneck works. Let's say all these colors represent traits. So this one would be one for um, color. This is good color. All right, they blend in well with the environment. That's good. This one is for their ability to find food. So we'll put the F here for food. Okay, this one they can find food well. This one has to do with how strong they are. Okay, they have good strength. Okay, if I can make the T here. This green one here is for speed. They're all real fast. Okay, so a lot of good traits here. Okay. All right, so color, food, strength, speed. We'll say here intelligence or smart. Okay, how smart they are. And then the bottom one here, we'll make this one, let's see, able to find mates. All right, they're good at finding mates. Okay, so it doesn't bother them. All right, so let's say you've got all these genes in this population. It's really good. Okay, you've got some great rabbits there. All of a sudden, some sort of disease comes in. All right, and wipes out a lot of these rabbits. Well, all of a sudden, you might see how this purple one doesn't cross over into this next generation here. So all the ones with good color die out. Okay, all the ones that can find food die out. They're gone. All the ones that are strong die out. All right, just so happens that the ones who have great speed just randomly survive. So those pass on. The ones with intelligence die out. Okay, they're out. And then the ones that can mate are able to find mates survive. So now you got this population over here, this new population after the disease wipes them out of speedy rabbits, right? Good fast rabbits that can mate, but they don't have good color, and they don't know how to find food real well. And they're not strong and they're not smart. So you've got these dumber, rabbits that stick out that can't find food real well, but they can still mate, right? They're breeding all these things here. Right here, that's why all this good genes over here died out, okay, and they're not being produced anymore. Now, how do you fix that? How do you solve that? New traits have to be brought. That's why this variation is so important. New traits have to be brought in. So maybe you create a dot here and you let's send this rabbit in, right? And this one again has good color again. All right, then you let another rabbit come in, okay, and let him start mixing in with the population here. And he's able to find food real well. Okay, so bottleneck happens when certain traits die off for whatever reason. Okay, certain traits die off for whatever reason, and then when they are able to reproduce again, those traits have disappeared. So it's not good. All right, the only way to change it is to add new traits to the population. Okay. Now, how resistance to insecticide is a survival characteristic. That's our last one there. All right, if you didn't get it right here. The reason why genetic variation with the population is important is because if there's no variation, okay, there's not enough traits for them to survive. Like I said here, and I don't mean to go back, but I want to make sure there's not enough traits here in these rabbit population to help them survive everything they need to. If they need to be camouflaged, to find food, to be strong, whatever. So when you have to have this variation, so they can pull from every single trait in their gene pool. Okay. Now, explain how resistance to insecticide is a survival characteristic. Okay, insecticide resistance is a result of natural selection. Some individual insects in a population are resistant to certain insecticides. All right, so basically, when you have bugs in a certain area, okay, you ever read a bottle of this bug spray, it'll say 99.9% effective. Okay, well, and you ask yourself, why is it 100%? Because some of these bugs, you can spray them with that stuff and it will not work. All right, that is an adaptation. Some of those bugs just randomly have. It's not special. It wasn't given to them. It was given to them from the parents, but again, it's not something they just can practice and get better at. When these insects, okay, that you tried to spray and kill, when they survive and reproduce, they pass on those same genes to survive that insecticide onto their offspring. Okay. Now, let me give you a story about that real quick and it'll make it make more sense. I used to work at Home Depot. All right, I used to sell. I'd be in the lawn and garden, and we'd come in the summertime, and these guys would come in and be like, "Hey, give me some. I got these tomato plants. There's these little bugs all over them. Let me get some stuff." So I give them this 7 dust. Okay, I give them the 7 dust, and more times than not, it was fine. I never saw them again, which means it worked. Well, some guys I would hand the 7 dust to, and they'd be like, "No, man, don't give me that stuff. It's terrible." Those guys just ate it up. Well, it's not the 7 dust fault. What's happened is somebody's used it in the past on those same bugs. Okay, a few of those bugs survived the 7 dust, which again, it's going to happen. Okay, those bugs survived and reproduced and passed on those genes to the next set. Okay, and so when you try it on the next set, right, they've already survived it. So again, it's just going to be like you're just throwing regular dust on them. Nothing much is going to happen to them. So what I did to help this guy is I say, hey, look, okay, and I wasn't going to give him a biology lesson, but I was going to say, look, try this other stuff. Okay, the other stuff had a different main ingredient in it, so it's gonna affect different genes and things the way it attacks the system, and it worked for him. Okay, so again, it wasn't the fact that the bug spray didn't work; it's the fact that those bugs had survived it before, reproduced, had new kids who also can survive it, and so yeah, they're gonna laugh it off. All right, so as far as the actual question is concerned, okay. Basically, when they're able to survive the insecticide, right? When they're down here, when they're able to survive the insecticide, okay, those genes are passed on to their kids, all right, so it becomes a survival characteristic, okay? When they can survive the insecticide, they're going to reproduce and pass it to their kids, and that makes it a survival characteristic, all right? If you have any questions, email me, okay? Otherwise, we'll see you Monday for the note quiz.